Hello everyone and welcome to Radiology. And this video I'm going to be talking about working in teleradiology. So this channel, as you know, is mostly about image interpretation, studying pathologies and their appearances on X-ray. But I've had a lot of comments, particularly on LinkedIn, about the job I do. Is it worth it? I've had lots of questions about how to get into teleradiology and what it's about. So I think it worth just doing this video just to run through 10 of the questions that people have asked me. I'm going to be really open and honest about it. I'm not going to pull any punches about the job. I think it's important that I'm as open and honest as possible so that people can get a good sense of what's involved and make that decision on whether to do teleradiology either part-time alongside their NHS job or full-time. This is more aimed at radiographers rather than radiologists. I can't really speak for the medical profession, obviously, but there will be some overlap there. There'll be some overlap. I'm going to be talking more about the job in general terms rather than any technical points. So it might strike a chord with some of you. But, if it helps a few people get clarity on whether it's for them, then I'm all for it. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So I've done this little PowerPoint just to go through the questions. And the first one that I'm asked this quite a lot is, why did I leave the NHS? So, I love the NHS as an organisation. It provided me with the training that I needed to be a radiographer, and it's given me a fantastic career for well over a decade. So I love the impact we can have on the patients. The people, it's such a great team, the NHS. People work tirelessly around the clock to look after people, despite really difficult circumstances. But there comes a time in life where you want to change. I'd reached the ceiling clinically of my career. I didn't want to go into management. Now, some of you may. So there's always that option for some people who go into advanced practice and consultant practice in radiography. You might want to go into a more senior leadership role, like a director of AHP role. They've started to become more popular. So there is that option. But I just got to a point where I fancied a bit of a change and I wanted more flexibility. So the job, although there's options to maybe not work a day, some NHS jobs for reporting radiographers will allow you to work from home once a week, which is brilliant. But I wanted more flexibility to be able to see my family more, my kids. My wife and my kids mean everything to me. They're what keep me going. And unfortunately, I was doing so much reporting. I was having to bring work home, and it was starting to impact on family life. And I think that's the case for quite a few people, that you hit a point where you think, I'm doing all this work, and actually, that what if we're not seeing the family, if we're not spending enough time at home, what's the point? And the family's always going to trump work for me. I work to live, not the other way around. So, maybe some people feel the same. That flexibility was absolutely key. Some people might want more money. So, this isn't a radiographer thing. This is across the NHS. I don't think anybody in the NHS is paid what they're owed, really, for the responsibility and all the training and the work that they put in. But we're not going to get into the politics of that on here, certainly. But some people may think that they deserve more pay for what they do and look for a change. Some might look for more autonomy in the decision making, and I think as much as as you go up through the ranks in the NHS, you get more autonomy in decision making to a certain point. But I'm talking here more about autonomy in work. So if you want to go on a study day, for instance, you've got to jump through about 14 hoops before you can get released. There's none of that when you work for yourself. So again, it gives you that flexibility to be able to do what you want when you want. If you want to go on a study day, if you want to do a research project, you don't need to seek permission. You can just go and do it. So that's a big plus. So there's lots of different reasons why people might want to leave. It's difficult, and I'm very passionate about the NHS, what it does for this country, and there are a lot of people deciding to leave, and hopefully be able to turn it around. I certainly haven't ruled out a return, and I think a lot of my colleagues that do this have said the same. So, but it's all down to personal preference in what you want from life, and the flexibility was absolutely key for me. So the second question I get asked again quite a lot is who can work in teleradiology. So by who, they mean radiographers. Predominantly it was radiologist only. There are still some companies now that only employ radiologists. They won't employ radiographers. Certainly some of the most, if not all overseas, don't entertain the idea. And you can understand why, because radiographers reporting still in relative terms is relatively new. It has become embedded in the UK over the last couple of decades, certainly. But in other countries, obviously, that's not the case in different healthcare systems, etc. So there are quite a few UK-based teleradiology companies, however, that do accept reporting radiographers, and to great success. So there are certainly opportunities out there. When I started doing private work a decade ago, it was all in-house. So you would go to different hospitals, you would go on site to do the reporting. Now, as workspaces become more scarce, teleradiology has come more to the fore, and particularly after COVID. So there's a lot more opportunities now in remote radiology. And for obvious reasons, in terms of your traveling time, etc., it's very, very appealing. It allows you to do more work. You're not wasting time traveling to and from the hospitals. It's not as tiring. I've done jobs. I've done jobs where I've had to travel 5 hours in each direction in one day to work. I don't really want to go back to them days. Some people still go in because they like that interaction, the team interaction. In my experience, you were sat on a room on your own anyway. So from that sense, I think, teleradiology is becoming more and more popular. Some of the companies, they're starting to get a bit saturated though. So I don't think there are the number of opportunities that there used to be. I think some companies are getting a bit full now with staff, but there are companies out there that are still taking people on. So if it is something for you, go and approach them, ask them. Even if there isn't space available at the time, it puts you on the radar. That's what I did. I went out, I approached loads of companies. There wasn't necessarily work at the time, but then when it did come up, they're like, "Oh yeah, Nick came to see you. Yeah, maybe we'll ask him," and that's how it works. So stick with it. Even if you want to do it and you approach them and there isn't work at the time, keep going, and opportunities will come up. Is teleradiology flexible? Well, absolutely. It's a main plus for me. It's so flexible, it's unreal. So, I could basically, I could work in the morning and then say, right, I'm going to have the afternoon off. I'm going to go and pick my kids up from school. I'm going to do some jobs at home, and it's fine. It's absolutely fine, and that's a big plus compared to the NHS for me, is that having that ability to be able to change things on the day. Now, obviously, you don't want to let people down, and companies will send you certain amounts of work to get through, but some of them will have different key performance indicator times. So if some of the reports are due the next day, the day after, you can take some time off. And some of, if things come up, they'll also understand if you send work back. You don't be afraid to send work back either, because they've got other people that can do it. So there's definitely that flexibility there. I know some reporters that have worked 6 months on and 6 months off. They're actually taking half a year off so they can go away traveling. So personally, the only thing I would say is, be careful if you're taking long periods of time off work, then there is potential to lose that work. That would be given to someone else, and then they might not be able to give you that work back. So you just got to be careful about how you plan your months. But there's definitely that potential to take more time off, and also you can take on projects that you might not have been able to take on. These big research projects that take a lot of hours, a lot of time, either away from work, or more often than not, people are having to do that at home. But you actually incorporate it into your working week more. If you want to study a PhD, again, you can do that. You can do that. There is a lot of potential there. There's a lot of potential to get involved in different groups as well. Things that you might not have been allowed to go to, you might not have had time. They might, some of these events, study days cost a lot of money. So trusts are, I'd say reluctant, but there has to be a really good reason why you go and do these things, and they won't always give you the time. With this, it's completely up to you. You do what you want, and that's the big appeal. Yeah, a couple of people have asked me what hours I work. I think just to put into context a typical day. I mean, for me, I work Monday to Friday still. I'm a bit of a creature of habit, but I do have 2 young kids to look after as well. So I work between the hours of 8 and 6, 8 a.m. till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday, but I can take hours off. I drop the kids off at school, pick them up. If I've got to go anywhere doing errands, looking after stuff, I can take time off. So it's very, very flexible, as I've said, but typically I would do between 8 till 6. But that doesn't have to mean just sat down at a desk reporting all that time, because you would lose your mind if you was constantly doing that every single week. I think you'd go insane. So again, you can split it up with breaks, with other projects, maybe preparing a bit of teaching, doing other bits and pieces just to keep it fresh. Is full-time work in teleradiology stable? A lot of people are scared, and I've got to be honest, no, it's not stable. It's not stable at all. The work fluctuates massively. One day you could have 300 reports sent to you and think, oh, this is great. I can do a bit today and I can do a bit tomorrow. I can plan it. And then the next week you get absolutely nothing. It literally is that one extreme to the other. I signed up with multiple companies, and I'm certainly not shy about telling them that. And the reason why I sign up to more than one company is for this exact reason, because you can't have a situation where 1 week you've got so much work you can't complete it, and then another 3 weeks of nothing. So it's about managing your time. The companies are fine with it. You're doing a job for them, but they also understand the nature of the work. So, well, they have for me anyway. So don't be afraid to work with more than one company. And you can say to them, you can map it out according to roughly how many reports you can do an hour. You can say, look, I can do this many for you today maximum, and split that between companies. So you know that the more companies you work with, the less risk there is, the less chance that you're going to have nothing to do and you're going to be sat twiddling your thumbs and not earning anything, because you're paid per report here, guys. It's not like in the NHS where you're paid per hour. You are paid per report. So the more reports you do, the more you get paid. If you don't have any, you don't get paid. Okay. Now, obviously, you can't rush these things. You've got to do the best possible job for those patients. So we've got to be careful, guys, in how we plan our day to make sure that we're not rushing, trying to get too many reports done that we don't have time for. But equally, we want to make sure we've got enough to give us a full day's work. And by having multiple companies, we can map that out over the week to make sure we've got a steady stream of work coming in. The problem is, of course, that any kind of change in policy or funding for a trust could result in pulling the work. And there is a big possibility that next month this could all stop. In the NHS, you're going to get paid same time every month, and very, very unlikely you're going to be made redundant or anything's going to happen. With this, it's private work. Private work, completely different. You can get cut at any time. I've been doing this for 3 years now, and thankfully it's remained pretty steady, but it could end at any time. So you've got to be comfortable in your mind that financially, if this stops, we're going to be all right, but we're going to have to find something else. And that's fine, but the longer you're out of the NHS, the longer you're out of that circle, the harder it is to come in at the same grade. because you're not keeping up with things. You're not doing the same level. On your CV, you can say, right, I've been involved in this, and this. You are still doing things, but if you're out of that role, the longer you're out of that role, the harder it is to prove to someone that you can still do that role. So if you're the sort of person like me that is quite laid back and thinks, well, it is what it is. If it stops, fine. We'll apply for jobs and we'll go in. Great. If you're the sort of person that worries constantly about finances, this is not for you. This is not for you. The other thing to consider is the impact of any discrepancies. I'm always open about discrepancies in reporting because it's part and parcel of the job. It's not something any of us like. Nobody likes to get something wrong. And unfortunately, particularly when it comes to things like chest reporting that are quite subjective, there will always be times where someone disagrees on you, either missing something or misinterpreting something, or even something as simple as getting a referral wrong, an alert wrong. There will always be instances where you are challenged. Now, in the NHS, you work for the NHS. If somebody takes umbrage to your work, whether that be a fellow colleague or a patient, the patient may sue the NHS. They may feel like there's been negligence, that they've not been looked after properly because you misinterpreted something. If you work for the NHS, it will be the NHS that gets sued. Now, you will probably have some kind of investigation, maybe even some disciplinary procedure, but you won't be liable for that mistake. It will be the NHS. Now, when you're working privately in teleradiology, it's your name alone on that report. You are the person responsible legally for that report. And if a patient decides to sue for whatever reason, then that will fall on you. It won't fall on the companies that you work for. When you sign up, you sign to say it's your responsibility. Working for a limited company, if you did decide to work for a limited company, would offer some form of protection, but essentially it is you in the spotlight, and that can be absolutely terrifying. Again, you've got to kind of think that, and this isn't just for reporters. This is for any kind of profession in the NHS. I mean, if you look at surgeons, for instance, they have to deal with this kind of thing all the time. But if you're working alone with no colleagues for support, it can be really, really distressful. Thankfully, that's not happened to me, but I know a lot of colleagues, NHS and private, that have been involved in negligence claims, and some of them have had HPC contact them saying you're under an investigation for fitness to practice. I've seen people in private reporting who have done work for trusts and they've missed something on one X-ray, or they've had 2 or 3 misses in a short space of time and been pulled up. And I often think, with teleradiology, and I don't mean to sound controversial, but I don't think I am. I think there's a different level of scrutiny for people who work privately as opposed to people that are in the NHS. I think some people dislike people that work privately. I think there's a level of distrust. I think part of that is because they're paid per report, so there is this assumption that people rush things or they don't necessarily take the same care and attention. I think because people in the trust don't know you, because you're outside of that working bubble, people don't know your ability. So there is, again, this assumption that, well, they may not know what they're talking about. And there does seem to be this culture of, if you make a mistake, particularly in teleradiology, it's magnified. And you've only to make one or two mistakes in short succession, and suddenly you're being put up for investigation under fitness to practice. If you stripped it back and you look at audit rates, etc., I would say that probably the people that work in privately, radiographers, compared to people in NHS, the accuracies would be the same. But it's that ideal, that notion of, we don't know who this person is, we don't know what the motives are, they've missed something, they could have rushed it, we need to sort them out. Whereas I do think in NHS teams there is a little bit more slack, because they understand you more and they know, they audit you every single month. Now we do in this, you get audited by the companies, peer review every single month, 5% of your workload. So you do have that evidence there. And let's be honest, if you've been working in this profession for years, you know what you're doing. Yeah, I've done this for 14 years. I wouldn't still be doing it if I couldn't do the job. If I wasn't accurate enough, you just wouldn't, because you are under scrutiny, constant scrutiny in private reporting, particularly radiographers, because historically there's always been that question mark anyway under radiographers' ability to report. Now, studies have shown, obviously, that radiographers can report to the same standard as radiologists, but there is still in some trusts that scrutiny anyway. And then when they see people externally reporting for these companies and the radiographer, any misses, that gets magnified. So it's about being able to be confident in your own ability to say, look, mistakes, they're part of life, right? Not just reporting, but in all walks of life. I failed on multiple occasions, but I never make the same mistake twice. The important thing with a discrepancy, with a miss, with what, is that you learn from it and you adapt your behaviour accordingly because of it, and you become a better reporter. But you can't constantly be worried that something's going to come back on you. You can't buckle to the pressure, people question your ability, because it will happen constantly throughout your career, certainly in teleradiology. You have to be very strong-willed, and you have to be confident in your own ability to stand up and say, do you know what? I've given 100% for this patient. I've taken my time. I've done all the checks. But you know what? Sometimes things are sneaky. Sometimes you misinterpret things on the day for whatever reason, I don't know. But it isn't through lack of trying, and it isn't through lack of ability. And I can back it up with all my experience, with my audit results, etc. Now, if you can do that, then teleradiology may be for you. If you think that it would really get to you mentally, and you would be constantly awake at night, tossing and turning, thinking, oh no, did I miss that? Is someone going to contact me? Am I going to get sued? Then it isn't worth it, guys. It's not worth it. It really isn't. So it depends, I guess, on how you can handle those types of situations. I've learned over the years to deal with it. It's never easy for anyone, but if you can deal with it, it can be great. If not, guys, I would say just I would avoid. How do we keep learning? Well, as I mentioned, this is so flexible. There are so many opportunities to keep learning. That this is why I've done this channel, it helps me to learn, because I'm constantly refreshing knowledge. But it also means I can give back a bit, and I can teach people in a really easy, comfortable environment. And there's all sorts of different projects and things you can work on that you wouldn't have had time otherwise. You can go and do more postgraduate lecturing. You can get involved in more study days, study groups. Yeah, I work for the Society of Radiographers Benevolent Fund as a trustee. Now, we don't have loads of meetings, but there is quite a bit of work that goes on in the background, looking at applications, etc. I probably wouldn't have been able to do that in my other job, because I wouldn't have that time. So now I've got that freedom to be able to travel to and from the meetings. There's lots of different things to do. There's lots of different ways that you can keep building your CPD. As you become more established as well, people see your profile, they see you on LinkedIn, etc., and you may get invited to more things as well, to be able to speak at conferences and events. You can have the time to do work on research projects and maybe present them at conferences like UKIO. In my experience, everyone has job plans in the NHS, don't they? Or most people. Certainly when you get to a advanced and consultant practice level. But what's written on paper, as we all know, is not what happens in reality. And you might have 20% of your time devoted to study on paper, but when there's loads of reports to be done and other things to sort, that gets in the way. So at least with this, you can kind of separate it and say, right, I'm going to take this afternoon to work on this project and learn about this and write an article for that. And so it's really, really good in that sense, guys. It's really brilliant to be able to devote the right time to do your learning, your CPD. Right, getting into nitty gritty now. So, do you need your own insurance to work? Yes, absolutely. Privately, NHS again. The Society of Radiographers traditionally provided indemnity insurance. Now, unfortunately, they don't do that for private work. Okay, so when I first started over a decade ago, I didn't need to really worry too much about sorting insurance because it was already there from the society. When that changed, everyone was like, oh God, what do we do? So now, thankfully, there are a lot of companies that provide professional indemnity insurance. It's not extortionate amount of money. You're probably talking anything between 600 to £2,000 for the year. Some reporting companies will actually provide their own indemnity insurance, so you don't have to sort it. You'd start working for them, and they just deduct it off your monthly pay. So there is that option if you don't want to put that money in up front. It depends what company it is. So you can ask them about that, guys, would be my advice. Ask them, do you provide your own indemnity insurance or do you insist on it? And usually, traditionally, it was 1 million, 2 million worth. Then it went up to 5 million. Now it's 10 million. It keeps increasing. So most companies will want 10 million quid's worth of professional indemnity insurance. So do your research, guys. There are lots of companies out there. It's easy enough to sort, right? With advice, the companies will help you. They'll have an idea of what companies the current workers use, so they can point you in the right direction. But it's one of them things to be aware of. In the NHS, of course, you don't need to worry about that. And the society does provide level of indemnity for NHS work, but we're talking about the private work here, guys, the teleradiology. You need your own indemnity insurance. Is there a lot of admin involved? Yes, there is. It depends what you do, whether you work full time or whether you do it alongside your NHS job. I do it full time. So what I did was I set up a limited company to be paid through. Some people will use something called an umbrella company. So that company will manage the pay and deduct, hopefully, the right amount of tax. So you're not having to worry. You're not having to get an accountant to do that. If you get a limited company, you need an accountant unless you're very, very good at that kind of thing. If you're anything like me, who hasn't got a clue, you get an accountant. They'll do all your end of year tax returns and everything for you. And you'll just pay through the company. You'll just pay them at the end of the year. So that's something that, again, you wouldn't normally consider. Another thing is your pension. So if you're doing this full time, of course, NHS pension, one of the best things about the NHS still is the pension. It's one of the best pensions, if not the best pension out there currently. So you're moving away from that. You're not going to have that. Obviously, you're going to have what you've already put into that pension, but you're not going to build on it. So what do? You need to set up a private pension. So you would need a financial advisor to sit down with, talk through the different options, set one up, and then you can take that. If you have a limited company, you can take that out of the company, okay? And it's not liable for corporation tax either. So you can just take it straight out of the company, put it into your pension pot, and that can be your pension. So that's a tip there, something that you need to think about. People don't, especially if they're sort of 20s, 30s, they don't like to think about pensions much, but it is important. It's something to think about. And the earlier you can get it set up and put in, the better it's going to be, guys. So make sure you do that in the background as well. Oh yes, so I get asked this all the time. It's what everyone wants to know, innit, about these kind of things. How much can you earn? It's not all about the money, guys. You know, that's what I will say. The main pros are the flexibility. Can you earn more? Yes, you can. But it depends on what you do. It depends on how much work's available. You get paid per report you do, right? If an examination has multiple body parts, then you'll get paid a certain amount depending on how much. It's all, every company works it out differently. Okay, so it just depends on who you go with. It ranges usually from around £2 a study to £3.50 usually, depending on who you're with, and sometimes depending on what you report. Some companies still have a higher rate for chest abdomen as opposed to MSK. I've never understood it really, but there you go. I would say you can earn anything, being honest with you. You could earn anything from nothing, because there's no guarantee of any work, up to about 300 grand, depending on the amount that you do. I'd say an average earnings in this kind of job's around 70 grand. But you've got to remember, guys, right? That might sound great, but you've got to remember that your tax has to come off of that. And if, depending on what you do, whether it's PAYE or whether it's limited company, you could be losing 40 to 50% because of the tax bracket that you'll fall under, because of corporation tax if it's a limited company. There are lots of things to consider. And you've got to remember your pension contributions as well, guys. Remember, because they already come out with the NHS. They work with this, so this is extra. So on the face of it, it might look like, oh yeah, I'm earning 20 grand more than what I was in. But when the other stuff starts to come out, might not be that much difference. So it's worth sitting down, having a think about it, working it out, making sure that it is right for you. Now, what I will say is, you can't just be driven by money. And that's really important. Got to remember why we're doing this, guys. The whole point of this type of work is to provide the best possible service for these patients, right? NHS, as amazing as it is, the teams, often struggle to cope because demand gets bigger year on year. We're getting more and more patients through the door, and you can't rush these things. And in order to meet the targets, that's where we come in, right? So we do the reports to make sure that people aren't waiting, particularly GPs. They're not waiting weeks for a report that could really affect their lives and their treatment. And we want to make sure that those reports are spot on. So in order to do that, you've got to take your time. You've got to devote the right amount of time to study the image, but also look at the priors, all the information that's available to you. You cannot rush. And I think sometimes there's this feeling that because it's paid per report, people are going to rush these things, right? You can't do that. You cannot do that, because you will make mistakes. And at the end of the day, you've got to look at it as, if I was going in, or if my mum and dad were going in for something, I would want to make sure that at every step of their journey throughout, everyone was doing 100%, everything they could to make sure that they got the best possible treatment, the right diagnosis. So do the work that's right for you. Some people over time will build up an efficiency rate where they can do 40, 50 reports an hour quite comfortably, and that's absolutely fine for them. Others, it might only be 10, but that's fine. You work to the level that's right for you, but do not think because this is you paid per report. Oh no, I've got to get through a certain amount. You've got to look at it on a case by case basis, and you've got to get it spot on for those patients, because that's what we're doing this for, right? So if you're purely motivated by money, it's not for you. It's not, because subconsciously, even if it's not a conscious thing, if it's a subconscious thing, you'll end up trying to get more in. Oh, I'm tired, but I'll just do another 10 reports. Oh, I've got 100. I've only done 70, and but I've not got long left. I'll just quickly try and do. You can't do that. You cannot do that. I think sometimes people think a bit of pressure as well, because these companies will send them so much to do, and you think, oh, the KPI's up this afternoon on these. I'm struggling here. If you are, send them back. Send them back. Say, look, I've reached my limit here. These studies I've done were quite difficult. It's taken me longer. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but please reallocate these to other colleagues that'll be able to do them in the appropriate time. And I guarantee you, every single company will be happy with that, because that's great management. That's great reporting management. It's great patient management. You're putting them first. You're realizing that you don't have the time or the energy to be able to do these properly, and you're sending them on. Right. I know that the companies, sometimes you'll be sent a long list of reports to do, and there's this feeling that, look, I don't want to let them down. I don't want to disappoint anyone because they might not send it again. Every single company will understand if you can't finish the work they've sent, they'll just send it to someone else. Do not worry about it. Don't put pressure on yourself to do a set number each day, because it's fluid. Every single examination is different. Some are simple, some are complex. It might take a minute to report one study. It might take 10 to report another one. It's fine. Everybody's different needs, different difficulties. Do it at a pace that's right for you, that's safe, that you're going to get the best possible quality in those reports. Forget about everything else, okay? You will get enough done to be able to earn a decent living, I'm sure of it. So, and I'm saying, I'm emphasizing this point because I think there is this misconception about some people in this industry that do rush things, and I don't think that's the case. A lot of the things that, because I do a lot of peer review, and a lot of the reports, particularly the radiographers, are really good, really detailed, and I don't want people having that opinion of them in the NHS, because it's not the case. So for anyone new coming in, they just need to realise that as well. Okay. And finally, would you recommend it? Ask this all the time, all the time. Would you recommend working privately? Because a lot of people still don't know it even exists. They don't know about it, want to know more, and that's great. My answer to that is I would recommend it to some people, for the reason of those 1 to 9 questions that we talked through. It's like any job. It's a good fit for some, but not for others. It depends on your mindset. Can you cope with the fact that you may have a month where you don't earn anything? Can you financially support that? Can you mentally support that? Can you accept the fact that there may be a case where you get sued and you've got to go to court and stand up and defend your corner? It's possible. It's very possible, particularly in this line of work. So can you have the mindset to go it alone? The site of radiographers, they're brilliant. They've got IR reps in the NHS on site that can help you, and they will have people that you can talk to in this line of work. But by and large, you're on your own. You're on your own, and it can feel very isolating at times. It can feel lonely. You go from working in a team where you've got that constant interaction. If you're a miserable moaning person like me, who's happy to sit on their own in a dark room, for 8 hours with no social interaction, perfect. But if you're more of a social persuasion, it might not be for you. It's certainly not glamorous, and it's harder than people think. This is harder than people think it is. So it's all about what you're like as a person, what you want from life. Do you want autonomy, to be able to do what you want when you want, to have ultimate flexibility? Might be more pay, might not. Don't use that. Don't just think about that as an indicator, because you just don't know. But if you want that flexibility, if you want to spend more time at home, whether you've got kids or with your partner, or even just by yourself or whatever, with your friends, if you want to have that time, then yeah, possibly it's for you. So yeah, guys, I hope that's helped. I just thought it was worth it, because I get asked all the time. It's sometimes people find it hard to talk about, and some people like they avoid certain questions. I don't see the point. I don't see the point in doing that. I think if you're open and honest, you give people the tools to make a decision, go and do it. And there isn't a lot out there about teleradiology for radiographers and the career itself. So I hope it's been useful. I'm going to do another one about transitioning into advanced practice, enhanced practice, and into consultant practice. I'll probably talk a bit about my career journey, because that's all I've got to go off. Thing is, everyone's journey is different, isn't it? But I might do one about mine and give some tips for people who want to do reporting around the sort of CPD should be doing, around interviews, and getting into consultant practice as well in the NHS. So I'll do something on that later. But if you've liked this video, guys, please put a like on. Share your experiences. If you work in teleradiology, whether it be a radiographer or radiologist, drop a comment in. Tell us what it's like for you. Would you recommend it to a colleague? What are the pros and cons for you? What challenges have you faced? For me, I'd say the main ones are that uncertainty and the isolation. But everyone's got their own opinions. So yeah, drop us a like. Please subscribe to the channel. Hope you enjoy, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.